To order, starting with a roll call from my right.
Paul Sanders.
Justin Duraki.
Vaughn Morgan.
Jim Morales.
Chip Huzzy.
And we have a quorum, and the meeting is being recorded.
Mr. Chairman, if we could take one small item out of order.
Okay.
Since we have a lot to do. Last week when we signed the deed for the Wendell property, the form of our acknowledgement was slightly incorrect. And so this is Attorney Bill Dunn who did the closing for them, and would just ask us to sign a corrective deed. So if we could just affix our signatures to it, it corrects that little problem with the language of the acknowledgement, and we can get this problem done, and Mr. Dunn can go home.
What was the problem?
The form of the acknowledgement?
Yes, what in the acknowledgement was the problem?
I think is that it had simply been notarized rather than acknowledged as our free act and deed in our representative capacity.
Exactly.
The language of the acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Okay, I will allow that.
Thank you. So I have done my signature, and I can just send it down to Karen. You can take
There
care
should
of
be two places then to sign, right?
it. Just one, because the easement, in fact, was
Okay.
signed and no problem. Okay.
You want me to acknowledge it?
Oh, I thought that's what the email
I
said.
did, yeah,
The email said you would
You
do
all
it.
freely signed that, right?
Free act and deed.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. And as I said, I'll get you the book and page there for
That's
tomorrow.
fine. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And I will get out of the way.
Okay, the second item is, this is the first meeting after the elections during which we reorganized the board and assigned liaison duties. So first, let's discuss the appointment of chair and vice chair of the board. I guess I'll take the lead on that. I would like to nominate Paul Sanderson as chairman of the board. He has a lot of experience, and I'm actually would like to sit in a different seat for a while.
Like Goldie of the dot team doesn't appeal to you anymore?
Okay, well, thank you. The only thing I'd like to say to that is I'm perfectly happy to do that and run board meetings. The reality is I'm a full-time employee in Concord. I'm not here during any hour that the town offices are open, so I have limits. And if I were to do that, I would need the help of each and every one of you to actually accomplish things during the week. And so with those limitations in mind, I would be happy to run the meeting.
Any other comments?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes on that one. Next is the vice chairman of the board.
With that in mind, I'd like to nominate Vaughn Morgan to serve as vice chair.
I'll second that.
Moving right along. Well, I will humbly accept that. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I'll abstain from that one.
Is everything turned on, by the way?
Yes, yes, it is recorded.
Okay. The next is the assignment of liaison duties. So I'll entertain some discussion on that. I'd just like to mention that we still have the same board members here, and it seems like I've heard from different departments they were happy with the way the liaison duties have been assigned. It's a rarity to hear from the library, but they like you, Jim.
Actually, I did speak to Karen, and I said we would really like to continue with Jim if we could, please.
That's good. First time I've heard that in 10 years.
My wife doesn't even say that.
That charisma about you.
How much did that cost you?
Okay. I would like to, if everybody is happy with that, I would like to suggest leaving the status quo with one exception. I would propose nominating Paul Sanderson as the maintenance supervisor's liaison. He has an excellent rapport with him, and I believe would work well with Chester regarding Paul Hayden's job assignments with the Recreation Department. That is where I'm coming from on that. If anybody would like to add to that.
I will, but being closed door.
You what?
I will, but being a closed door.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
I agree.
Okay.
That being the case, I would do it. Again, as I said before, because I'm not here so many hours a week, I need each and everyone's help. So while I may be the person who acts as the more official liaison from the board, input from everyone is absolutely welcome.
Okay. So, go ahead.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. Okay, we have no public hearings,
All right, so-
go ahead.
Yes, can we just like review these names, just so I make
Yes,
sure
you
that I
can.
have them right?
Yep.
So Chester continues at Recreation, and these aren't votes, these are just, Budget Committee is still Paul? Oh, no, Chip.
Chip, yeah.
Yeah, cheap guy.
Police Department and Fire Department, Vaughn.
Mhm.
Building Inspector,
Jim?
Jim. Town Administrator, Jim. Library, Jim. Selectmen's representative to the Planning Board and CIP.
And you can open that for discussion if you wish. Plenty to do.
The only thing I do want to see though, the CIP got forgotten this time.
It did not get dealt with, that's right.
So I did my whip out and beat you.
Sounds like they're still on the
And it's
planning.
one of the thankless jobs you ever get do.
That's true.
All right, so that remains Paul.
Yep.
With consent.
Unlike Canings, I guess.
I'm fine.
And do we have an alternate for the planning board?
Was that you, Chip?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's great, because he's the only other board member who's had experience on the planning
Yeah.
board, I think. I don't think you've been on the planning board, Jim.
Okay,
Okay.
excellent. So let's move on to approval of the minutes from March 5th. Does anybody have any comments, changes?
I have
Amendments?
one correction. On the next to last, let's see. On the last page, recognition program, the last sentence, I think the word "in" was omitted. The board was agreement, it was a good idea. I assume it was supposed to read, the board was in agreement. It was a good idea.
Yes, okay. Anybody else? Entertain a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Under old business, we have Coakley update.
The only update I have is that on February 12th, Governor and Council did sign the grant for $200,000 for the study of the water line on Breakfast Hill Road.
Okay,
That's all been signed. Portsmouth actually got 2 grants in this round. They also got an additional $200,000 for protection of the well radius in Madbury.
okay. And for the information of the audience, we have Karen and Paul Sanderson both are handling the Coakley thing, so that's why I asked them what's going on. Paul, anything from your?
I think it mentioned last time that there was pending an emergency rule for Berry Brook regarding fish. And that emergency rule has now passed, been approved by JLCAR, Joint Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules. So Berry Brook now is a catch and release only location. And that rule is now in force. And so we will be participating with EPA, and Fish and Game will be participating with EPA and DES in the QAPP, Quality Assurance something program. I forget what it is, but in any event, it's a testing of fish tissue during the summer. So what's happening with Fish and Game is the fish that we stock will be marked so that if they're caught for the purpose of testing, they'll know that they're hatchery fish. And if they are not marked, then they won't be that, and we'll find out if there's any actual bioaccumulation in that particular area.
Okay, good. Okay, and we do have with us tonight Dennis Malloy, our state representative. Would you like to add anything, please?
Yes, thank you. The House overturned the committee recommendation, Environment and Agriculture Committee recommendation, to not, the vote was to not give the DES the authority to clean up or work on cleaning up Coakley. That's shorthand for it. And the House overturned it. So the House voted to let the DES go to work on help mitigation, working on mitigation up at Coakley by a pretty wide margin. So that will have to go to the Senate, and there's other things that will go on. And Paul knows the legal side of this, and I've sat in on the hearing and I testified, and the chair of the committee was thinking along the same lines that the DES, the EPA has the ultimate authority, this DES didn't. And that's what the committee found, but the House overturned that. So it's good news.
Yeah, yeah.
It demonstrated that this is broader than us. There are many towns and cities in New Hampshire that are facing this issue with these kinds of contaminants. And I'm thinking that there was some of that going on. And I have to say that Rennie Cushing gave an amazing speech on the floor that turned that around. It was outstanding.
Yep.
That's my.
Okay, good.
And then this week, there's a bill to subject the Coakley Landfill Group to the right to know law,
Yes.
and that comes before the House this week.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So.
Okay, yeah, I think as we move forward, this whole issue is going to become what I call a very wavy issue. It's going to have its ups and downs. We have a meeting, I believe, coming up at the Bethany Church, Karen?
April 4th at 6 p.m. It's a Thursday at 6 p.m. for another one of the community updates.
And this is an open meeting. Everybody is welcome to come in and voice their concerns and everything else about it. I will ask anybody else out in the audience, because this says you're going to hear this coming up and going down and coming up. So if anybody else has any questions or comments they'd like to make on it, please feel free to. Okay. Is there any other business we would like to?
Yeah, on old business, Mr. Sanderson had asked Charlotte to remind him Great Bay Drive West Planning Board update.
Yes. The other evening at the planning board, Mrs. Hagner came by and was asking what the current status of matters were. And I explained to her at that time, that the last time we had a meeting, Mr. Hagner had been here. And we had talked about the status of the design that we have from Underwood Engineering, the fact that we have titled, at least some sort of titled 18 feet wide along the way, but that is not wide enough to actually construct the proposed improvements. We had been to the Brackett family seeking to have a temporary construction easement granted in order to allow us to do that construction, and they have declined to grant that temporary construction easement. So right now we're kind of stuck. We don't have the legal right to go on the property to actually construct the necessary improvements, and we haven't had great communication with the Bracketts, and that's where our situation is. And as your wife indicated the other night, you're about to go back to sea for 4 months, and you'd like to see what we can do.
Right. The Bracketts, excuse me, David Hagner. Yeah, David Hagner, Great Bay West. The Bracketts' denial of easement, that happened between our last meeting at the planning board and tonight, did it?
No, that actually had happened before the last time you came and spoke with us.
Okay, when Nancy came back from the Thursday night planning board, I said, what'd you learn? She said, well, Paul said that you were gonna go meet with the Brackets. Let me just tell you what my conclusion was after I presented to the planning board. I had just met with the Brackets that very same day, and then subsequent to that, I had met with Mark Fougere. And the Brackets, and I'll recount some of it, if you didn't see this in the meeting minutes, I recounted some of my meeting with the Brackets, and they're generally amenable tone to seeing the road improved to the specifications of the Underwood design. Now, it seemed to me at that point everybody was on the same page. And Paul, there was a certain point where you and Mark Fougere were involved in conversation, and it seemed to me that a major milestone was hit that night because you and Mark kind of descended into the specifics of whether it was a waiver required for a subdivision, which could be granted right here at the or by the planning board, or whether it was an RSA thing, compliance or non-compliance. So it appeared to me that the logjam had been broken that very night. In fact, the last thing I asked you was, okay, this waiver, this supposed waiver that needs to be issued by the planning board, where do we go to learn what needs to be done? And you said, it'll all appear in the minutes of the meeting. So I read the meeting minutes. It was unapparent to me exactly what the next move was. So I accepted my neighbor Leonard's invitation to come back and meet with Mark Fougere, which I did. I came back, met with Mark Fougere. I said, Mark, what do you know? What do we need? Mark said, well, it turns out that your road is going to be the subject of a private meeting this evening with the planning board, not open to the public. And I thought, well, okay, it sounds like at least it's being attended to. But honestly, I think that at this point, the next move is really beyond the scope of any action by me. Not only am I running out of time, I'm really kind of running out of know-how. So, I can sit down and I felt the Brackets were, in fact, the morning they came, which was before I saw you last time, they seemed very, very, it's just a matter of engaging, somebody that can engage them in discussion. The Underwood plan, which the town commissioned and had done, appeared to be, well within their tolerance. So it seems like the thing's just hanging up again for no reason. That's from my perspective.
Okay. The other factor when we had spoken to them is they had wanted us to somehow guarantee to them that in the future, should a subdivision occur on their open property, that the road would not have to be changed, and in fact, the town would build curb cuts and driveways in for them, not driveways to the home, but curb cuts off the edge of this particular road. And what we had explained to them is that in the subdivision, the planning board takes a look at it and makes a determination at that point, and it's completely routine for developers to be asked to upgrade a road to whatever particular standards. And that's when the communication stopped.
Right, but again, Mark Fougere that evening seemed to have the ready answer for that. He said, you know what, it doesn't matter. Let's go ahead and build an 18-foot road now that suits the needs of all the residents down there. And should the Brackets decide later that they have other designs on their land, and quite honestly, when they spoke to me, their vision for their land seemed to be quite modest. But Mark Fougere even concluded, you know what, we don't even need to deal with that right now. That's in the future. Should they want to develop that land, they can come back to the planning board, back to the selectmen, we'll deal with that then. And additional stipulations can be put upon the terms of their development. So I thought we had cleared that problem too that evening.
And I would agree with you if they would agree to grant us a temporary construction easement without any form of guarantee as to what the future might hold.
Right. That seemed very promising to me based upon our last discussion that evening, because you said, at this point, we don't need any more land conveyance. All we need to do is be able to work above their ownership of the land. We just need to get in and do some maintenance. So if nobody's spoken to them since that meeting,
I have not, because I think I probably would be the worst possible person to send to their home.
David Wallowitz, also Great Bay or Great Pain West, as we've been called. The last time this all came to a head, and I spoke with Karen, we ended up, you ended up enlisting Peter Laughlin, and he had success talking to them. And I don't know them well, but every time I've talked to them, they've been the Brackett's, Mr. Brackett and Mrs. Brackett have been quite reasonable. And the last time I talked to them was when we were standing out in the cold waiting for Underwood to show up, and they didn't. And so I did have an opportunity to talk to him then, and he expressed to me that he was in support of the road being widened, and he was waiting to get the details from Underwood, which I understand. I think he subsequently has. My suggestion is, and I totally agree with your comment that you would be the worst person. Yes.
I totally agree.
My suggestion is that you enlist Peter. I mean, you're probably talking about a short conversation, and the last thing you want in this situation, I'm sure, is any misunderstanding. So, because I don't know about the rest of you, but we don't want to keep revisiting this.
Agreed.
I would think that Peter, in a short period of time, which, if I remember correctly, was all that it took last time to break the last logjam, we could move this forward.
Sure, and what we need is the temporary construction easement. Understanding that the future is the future and it is what it is, that's all. And if they're amenable to that, and if you suggest Peter as the person to perhaps have that conversation, I have no problem with that.
I think it would be the most cost-effective way to handle it, because otherwise the road is just going to deteriorate, and sooner or later we're going to have to deal with it ourselves. We had my wife was, I travel a lot for a living, and my wife was home alone in the snowstorm, and of course the oil went out. And the four-wheel drive emergency oil vehicle couldn't make it up the street. It took 4 tries.
I was home with 2 young children, an infant and a 4-year-old, and no heat.
Yes.
And he could not get up our road.
And by the way, the east was plowed, which is often the case. You know, we don't know why that is. It's a percentage thing. I attribute it to the drivers not necessarily knowing where they're heading. As you know, they don't often know where they're heading even when they're on the road, and they knock things out, but that's a separate issue.
Yes. And I walked down there this weekend, and it's in deplorable shape.
Yeah.
And I know that the Hagner suffered some damage from a plow this winter, and the situation needs to be corrected.
I mean, look, we know that you know how bad the road is. We understand that. And we know the history of the road, and there's a lot of debate about the history of the road, and there's even documentary evidence that contradicts the position that the town has taken. And I know, because you and I have debated this, that your town attorney gave you a written opinion that if we go to court, we're more likely to prevail. And so we don't really have any desire to go that route. We've been trying to be supportive and good citizens and be very patient, and we're continuing to be that way, and we want to work well. And I feel that maybe what we do is we work through Peter. And look, if there's Dave seems to have a good relationship with them. I really don't know them, but I'm certainly willing to talk to them. They seem like very nice and reasonable people. I understand that there's a lot of people that are blaming them, but I don't understand why that is, and I don't see that as appropriate or constructive. So my attitude is let's figure out a way to improve the road and not end up in a situation where I don't know, the miracle of Great Bay East, occurred and miraculously it got skim coated. I fear that if we skim coat where we are with 2 culverts that flood and all of that, you're just going to throw good money away after bad. And that's taxpayer money, which we don't want to do.
Well, just speaking for myself, I'm more than happy if you think that Peter might be the person to have that conversation, to make a motion. that we authorize the town attorney, Peter Laughlin, to have that conversation with the brackets and see if some sort of resolution can be presented back to us for solution.
Okay, go ahead.
I was gonna make that as a motion.
Okay, and I would like to say that I understand where you're all coming from, and the board was actually ready to go forward with this thing until we discovered that the town meeting said it had to be done upon approval of the planning board. All right, so, you know, this really, if the planning board, I think if the planning board goes for it, I don't think you'll have any problem with the selectmen, but it has to go through them according to the town meeting. We have to abide by that.
And
But I
that's
have,
the waiver that we were talking about. But again, we can't actually fix anything out there without that temporary construction easement.
all right, so I think it's a good idea to get in touch with Peter Laughlin.
So if we can get the easement signed, and then does the Board of Selectmen forward it to the planning board?
Yes.
Do you anticipate any problem if with the planning board?
I can assure you that I will be as persuasive as I can possibly be.
And I will too, if I have any.
If we are able to achieve that type of a resolution, temporary construction easement, the future is whatever it is, take what we have now and get this thing fixed so that you're basically back in business. That seems to be a very good pending resolution.
Okay, so when I talk with Attorney Laughlin, it's to eliminate the future curb cuts.
Yeah.
And removal of the additional trees.
I think trees would not be a terrible problem because that may be necessary to do the current
Okay.
improvements. I would put that into our temporary construction easement.
Okay, so
To
trees,
take out
okay, no curb cuts. I think the other option was moving it as close away from the bay as possible.
Yeah.
Which was fine.
Are you do you know, I can't see in the plan, is it trying to raise it down at the lowest point there?
At the area of the culvert, yes. And the plan is available for any of you to have a copy.
I know that, I'm not very good with engineering plans, but the logic, if you're gonna put down a new base, the more you raise it, the better, since the water.
Also, the culverts
That's up.
can't stay at 12 inches.
Yeah.
Okay, Karen?
So I have a motion and a second.
And
So I'll say all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Karen, I would be happy to talk to Peter.
Okay.
I talked to him last time before he talked to them. Not that it makes any difference, but I don't see any downside.
With our blessings.
Nothing I like better than see this thing behind us.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Is there any other old business anybody would like to bring up? Go ahead.
I've been working on a snowplow contract. I'm gonna have a schedule a meeting this week and next week. I should have a draft for the next meeting.
Good, great. All right, take that off my checklist. All right, under new business, we have a review of the town administrator's report. I think everything here we've actually talked about. Anybody have any questions, comments?
I just have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
On, you notice on the paragraph of the bank fraud.
Yeah.
Positive pay.
Yeah.
When does that get done? Does that get done after we put on the manifest and checks get written?
It's after the manifest is voted on, then the checks are run, so then they have official check numbers in the system. And then the approved checks get uploaded to the positive pay system.
Who actually does that uploading?
I do the uploading.
You're an expensive secretary, you know that.
Right, well, Liz puts together the Excel spreadsheet, and then I do the uploading. We have to maintain as much of a segregation of duties as we can. And there's only two of us involved, so.
Why can't she do that?
She can, but she is the one that's issuing check numbers and writing the checks.
Yeah.
So, and then if she was the one creating the spreadsheet and uploading it,
It's an opportunity for something to go wrong.
Right. And like the current issue that we're dealing with right now, it looks as though it was an inside operation at Morton Salt, but it was one of our checks. The amount hadn't been changed, but the payee had been changed. And the payee address had been changed. We mailed it directly to Morton Salt, and they use a bank lockbox. So the investigation is going on now that it was somebody
It
inside.
looked like an inside job.
Someone inside Morton Salt diverted the check and changed it. The check has been copied now twice. It was caught the first time through the positive pay system when it tried to get through the Provident Bank, and then I received a call a couple days later from Bank of America Clearinghouse in Florida that the check was trying to be passed again.
So this is exactly why the internal control, so that by having two people, the chances of that are
Is the
reduced.
cash handled the same way?
Is the cash handled the same way? Cash is, the only cash,
People who bring in the cash,
um,
they make out and they write a deposit and they actually make the deposit.
no, they do not. The treasurer makes that deposit. And the way we work with the transfer station money is the transfer station money comes into Charlotte, who counts it in front of the property maintenance supervisor. A receipt is written. That's given directly to Liz or put in the safe for Liz. She then recounts it, makes a deposit slip to Tina or to the treasurer, Mark now. And then those receipts are funneled back to both so that they match.
Okay, all set?
Good. Okay, let's move on to veterans credits.
I did
Easter egg and sunrise
Easter egg
service.
Oh, have I got this?
The important stuff on.
Sorry about that. All right, Easter egg hunt. See, you should take it.
Yep, the Community Congregational Church has requested its annual Easter egg hunt on the green next Saturday, March 21st at 10 a.m. They have coordinated with the police, which is generally the requirement because the kids cross, they meet over at the school or at the parish house and then cross the street.
Okay, we do this every single year.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody have a problem with it? I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the annual Easter egg hunt to be held on Saturday, March 24th, 2018, 10 a.m. on the green.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
And then the next one is approval of the Easter sunrise service, and that's held down at the gazebo for Sunday, April 1st at 6:15 a.m.
Again, an annual thing. Entertain a motion.
I move to approve the annual Easter sunrise service on the green on Sunday, April 1st, 2018 at 6:15 a.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Now the veterans, right?
Yes.
You're correct.
Okay. We have two veteran credit applications. One is a resident at 4 Doe Hill, and they qualify based on the years of service and New Hampshire residency. They actually qualified several years ago and didn't realize that both the husband and wife as veterans both qualified.
Okay,
That was a costly mistake.
That was a costly mistake, but they were instructed that was the case several years ago, unfortunately.
okay, I'll entertain a motion for 4 Doe Hill Lane.
Move to approve the veterans credit of $500 for residents at 4 Doe Hill Lane.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. For 120 Portsmouth Ave.
Yes, this is a new veteran who actually was just discharged on November 25th of 2017 and qualifies for the All Veterans Credit.
Motion.
Move to approve the all veterans credit of $500 for the residents at 120 Portsmouth Ave.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, both of those need to be signed by the board.
Okay, the MS 232 report.
This is the report that's due 20 days after town meeting. It is the report of appropriations actually voted. So the grand total of Appropriations actually voted $8,703,308. A substantial amount of that is offset by revenue, but the revenues aren't updated until September 1st.
Any questions? Motion?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Does that include our problem with the library things?
Yes, it does.
Does that enter into it?
Does that include, what
Well,
did you say?
there's going to be a recount on the library.
Oh, okay.
That's
If the recount results in a change in the result, DRA will be notified.
Okay.
But it falls after our deadline to get this in.
All right.
All right, a motion?
I move to approve the MS 232 report of appropriations actually voted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, this is the one flowage release.
Yeah, this is a new one, and I'm hoping Mr. Sanderson may know something about them. For the project on Willowbrook Ave, we received a request for me to sign a flowage release because stormwater from Willowbrook Ave flows into the drainage that connects onto Route 33. They're relatively new, and basically, if the town knows that somebody poured like oil down a catch basin and it contaminated onto Route 33, the town is responsible. If it happens by a car accident and there's leakage, that is not a town responsibility.
The idea of this is DOT is subject to the NPDES Phase 2 program, and they are an MS4 themselves. And so when that water flows into the drainage system that they control, they just want to have an acknowledgement that the water coming into that drainage system is clean and not the subject of an illicit discharge, which is the water being oil down the catch basin,
Right.
for example. And so this is something that they never had done in the past, they're just starting to do in the future to protect themselves against liability for dirty water coming into their conveyance.
Right, which is why I brought it to the board. On a lot of the routine things through permitting, I just sign them because I understand that that's what has to be done. But this is a first.
So, just for clarification, if this is done by a citizen, the town is responsible, is that correct?
The town is responsible vis-a-vis DOT, but we would have a cause of action against the citizen who created the illicit discharge.
If we knew who they were.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to authorize the town administrator to sign the flowage release for Willowbrook Avenue.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, next we have, Chip wants to discuss school closing on election days. By the way, something I've always kind of been in favor of.
I'd like to be authorized to go see the planning, school board, make that recommendation.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's their calendar, so it's their decision, but absolutely be happy to authorize you to go and to have that discussion.
I'm with you 100% of the way on that one.
Marge wants to say something, we didn't notice her, you're in trouble.
We've tried to do this, Chip, for a long time, Dean and
Well,
I.
I think,
And we had a meeting up there, and then they wanted us to go into the gymnasium on the other end of the school. But we had no place to keep our stuff, and we would have had to carry everything. We had issues with electricity and
It's-
so forth. It would make a
just with
lot
all
of
the
sense.
crap going on today,
It would make a lot of sense.
I think they're gonna have to sit down and realize that, maybe I'll ask the reporter to follow me.
And you may want to talk to, Chip, you may want to talk to Tara, because we were all on the same page.
Yeah,
Close the
I
school
just,
that
I know
day.
my wife walks around looking, see all the relatives in school, and I said, that's not really the smartest thing you should be
No.
doing.
Yeah. Well, here's another thing. Since that last time we had those discussions, the state has passed the constitutional carry bill. Okay, which means that no one can ask anyone if they're carrying a firearm. And when it's being used as a place of voting, it is not treated as a school for the Safe School Zone Act.
It's not.
It is
It's
not.
not.
And so that's why the
It's not.
police can do nothing. And so the reality is that people could very well be coming in to vote. They could be working at voting and they could be concealing a firearm and no one would know and there's nothing that anyone can do about it.
Okay, all the more reason, that's a good point to bring up too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm behind you, I think the whole board is
Yeah, absolutely.
behind you.
I don't know if it happens every year. This year, the Friday following the vote was supposed to be a teacher's workshop or something to that
Yeah.
effect. They canceled that because they had school because of snow cancellations, but maybe it could be.
They
coordinated.
working around, let that, they make the teacher workshop.
Maybe they could have a teacher workshop at the same day on voting day, and send the kids, have the kids off and, you know.
This I see is a real problem, and I know it was a problem 20 years ago, because I
Right.
remember talking to the
Times have
principal, and he's
changed,
saying they have to watch out for a couple of parents because they keep trying to steal each other's kids. And to me, that's just nothing I wanna go through.
No.
No. As a parent of children in that school, I think it should be shut down. I think it worked out really well this year.
Well, yeah, even though it's by accident.
Definitely,
that's-
definitely did,
proves in the
and
pudding
it
that they don't
saves
work.
paying a police officer, a second police officer to be up there too.
Right.
Okay.
Plus, there's plenty of parking for everybody.
That's true.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's true.
So you do that, report back to us, let us know what they say.
Yeah.
And if you need any help, anything we can do, let us know.
All
I
right,
think the whole board's behind you on this.
Great.
Next item is, report on town wages. Jim, I guess you brought that.
Oh, well, I did, mainly because I was reading through and I like to see what everybody makes, so I noticed there was some errors in it, that's all. And I discussed them with Karen, and I think it was mainly the transfer station employees and some of this. I didn't realize this was going to be something we had to look over. And I can't remember who it was.
You want to?
Yeah, I can. There was one of the transfer station attendants the math just didn't work going across.
Right.
There was another transfer station worker that was classified as an election worker. And what else could we find? So there were just a few typographical errors in that, but when we discussed it, you had expressed a concern that on a particular person, you knew what the salary, what the wage level was, and it showed as a lesser amount. That was with the building inspector. You said this doesn't
yes.
seem like this is the right amount because you knew what his wage was.
Yeah.
And so what we determined was that when the bookkeeper does the spreadsheet of these wages and gives it directly to Amy, who puts the town report together. And for the last 2 years, the wages shown have been the taxable wages, similar to what the school does. It's the gross wages less the pre-tax deductions that employees have for retirement, health insurance, and flexible spending. It's not the gross paid wages.
Right, it was it was our building inspector who came in at $49,404.88, and I believe that he had salaries up in the 50s. So I just thought that it really doesn't present a true picture.
Well, no, it does say it's a gross wage, but it really isn't the gross wage.
Right.
That's the
It's
problem.
the net wage.
I think the easiest way to do this
Social
would be to
Security
release the wages with a press release, just like the city of Dorset does. But it needs to get cleaned up, so there's people listed as EMTs and firefighters that are not.
Right.
Yeah, I have a question on that as well, yeah.
I think if we clean it up and just release it in the press, that covers, because we're not hiding anything.
We don't need to get down to the people who only make $100 reflects it, so.
Well, they're on here.
They're on there.
No, then,
Right.
you know, it's,
All right.
they may
That's
think,
fine.
people may think they're making a lot more money than they're making.
Well, that's
They
true.
may turn around and say, what are they, stupid, working for that level?
Well, my question also would be on the school, all right? Because you also, the school is, they have their wages. How do
Right.
they do it? Do they?
They do social security wages as well.
They do it the same way we do it. If we're gonna do it, we should all do it the same way.
Well, and hopefully it would be at the gross level, because obviously what a person chooses to put in flexible spending may
It
choose
changes their income.
substantially. And it's a perfectly proper benefit for them to have, but it doesn't show the public what their true gross wage is.
Yeah, it was Mr. Francois, the attendant, that got a pretty drastic error in the math. It's got his salary is $4,042 and his total gross pay at $13,432. So there's a little problem.
Right. Unfortunately, it was the last thing that was received for the town report, and Amy didn't have time to proofread it.
And the other thing, Karen, the first 3 months are on the old wages until the budget kicks in.
Right.
So that's it catches up the following year.
I have to make that a motion that we get that cleaned up and send a press release out for showing the gross pay. Because that's gonna be the easiest way to get the information out there.
A motion?
We can, why don't we, rather than send out a press release, we can correct it on the website where the town report is printed?
Why not send out a press release?
Okay. It's up to
Let's be
you.
upfront.
Why do that?
I wouldn't do that. I don't think.
Why would you wanna hide it?
Well, we're not hiding
I don't
it. We put it on the website and it's posted in the town report.
I think a press release, in my opinion, would make the person that made the errors feel bad. And we don't have a finance department to say the finance department made an error.
Right.
The other thing is, the discussion will appear in our minutes, and the press always reads our minutes. So if they have a question, they can
They'll come looking
immediately,
for it.
they'll find the answer.
May I make a comment?
Name?
Don Miller. I read the newspaper and I see the cities do this, but I have never seen a town post this kind of information unless somebody comes in under the Freedom of Information Act and asks for it. So I can't understand why you would even want to put it in for the town of Greenland, being a small community. I mean, if somebody wants to know, they're welcome to find out.
It's simple, it's public information, that's why I brought it up.
Well, I know, but why,
It's a
there is
major
certain
area.
public information that you shouldn't be just throwing out and volunteering to put out to the public. Unless there's a reason behind that you have concerns over what they're
No,
making.
just the information, that's all.
Okay.
No, I don't think we need to put it in the press personally. I agree. We can handle it within.
Just make the corrections
Yeah.
for gross wages on the town report.
Yeah. But I'd like the wages of both the town and the school to be the same. I'd like.
We have no control over this.
Well, but I
We can
think-
ask that
I
at
know-
the same
I know we
time.
have no control over it, but maybe, Chip, if you're going to talk to them, maybe you could bring that up also.
All right.
Because it doesn't make sense to show one part of the town, you know, at a different wage level than the other part of the town.
Right, and I think
That
that's
doesn't
why the
make any
change was
sense.
done.
That's why it was done. That's why it was done.
Yeah. So if you can get them to do it,
I doubt if I'll get them to do it, I'll ask.
You come back and let us know why. I mean,
Yeah. I think I'm gonna have a battle enough to get them closed for elections.
Well, of course, the other thing any of us can do is, under the right to know law, we can ask for a listing of gross wages prior to deductions for these things, and then we can post it.
okay,
That's how the right to know law works.
yeah. Okay? Excellent. I did note to Karen today on the back page of the town report, there's a listing of the transfer stations, rules, regulations, and stuff like that. That needs to be updated and changed, so if you can talk to Paul on that.
Okay.
Okay, it's a little antiquated. All right, one of the last items I have is, I'm sure we want to discuss the library bond issue. Do you Do you have anything you would like to?
Deal with her first.
We do have a recount. I received a petition with 12, I think 12 names on it, certified that they're all registered voters. In speaking with Dean, we have to do the recount. And I've noticed, I will be noticing all the people on the petition, plus the library trustees, as Marcia knows, we discussed this morning. The recount is scheduled for April 26th at 6 o'clock.
March 26th.
March 26th, here at 6 o'clock. And the board are the counters, along with Dean and myself.
All right, now this has to be done by that date, is that correct?
Correct, that is the last day.
So we need a quorum of the board here?
If we can get all of them.
Next Monday.
Next Monday, however many we can get. We've got 761 ballots. The ballots have been separated by page 1, 2, 3 in packs of 50. So we should be able to go through them relatively quickly. They can be observers, they can't be near where we're counting. So when I called the Secretary of State's office today, their suggestion was to have sheets of paper with yes and no. One person look at the ballot, the other person make the mark, and do them in groups of 5. Okay. And Dean agreed to that. He's going to prepare the forms. We just need to know who, if the board will be present, because he has the right, I believe, and Paul may correct me, to select another individuals if 1 or 2 of you cannot be present.
Okay, I'm going to be on vacation at that time.
Oh,
just so
good.
Have a good time, Ron. Is she carrying?
Yeah. So, and honestly, all the numbers, Gus did his numbers today, we're all on the same numbers.
Okay.
But
All right, so
we have the petition and we have to do it.
Paul?
Okay.
All right, we got 1, 2, 3, 4.
You'll all be here, that's great.
We'll be here.
The more we have, the quicker.
What time, again, what time?
6 o'clock, Monday, March 26th,
Okay.
in here. Dean couldn't be here tonight, so we've had several phone calls today.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, Chester, yes.
And they'll be serving drinks afterwards.
We'll probably need them.
Okay, any other new business anybody would like to bring up?
Couple small things, and this relates to the library too. Assuming that we get past our recount, we need to start talking about steps to be taken. And one of the very first steps that we have to take is determining real estate title to the library building and its property. Okay. And I think we've alluded to this several times in the past, that we have some issues out there with possibilities of reverter. Okay, does anybody but me know what those are? Okay.
If the property is not used as a public library, it reverts back to the donor.
Right. The really difficult thing when you're dealing with a bond issue or a mortgage or anything else, you could imagine how a bank would say, oh, you mean 10 years into the term of a bond, if it stops being a library, then all of a sudden my security is gone? So at that point, they have problems. So I just wanted to make sure that you had the information on what these reverters are. And then assuming we get past the recount, we're going to have to start taking the step of getting title done and get an opinion from bond counsel as to whether our title is sufficient. Okay, so this is the basic information.
Okay.
And what it consists of is the deed for the library land, which came in from the Clow estate. It did not come in from the Weeks family.
That's right.
And so there is a reverter back to that family. And then the building did come from Carolyn Weeks. And so for the building, there's a different reverter that goes back to the heirs of Carolyn Weeks. So we've got 2 of these whammies on there. And so that is an issue that we will have to deal with, one way or the other. So I just wanted to give you that basic information.
Yeah, that'll be helpful.
And then on the lightest of all lighter notes, the Portsmouth Garden Club, okay, who has as a member someone who I know pretty well, okay, they are giving out grants that came from their Festival of Trees fundraiser, And we can apply for a grant to put some annuals to brighten up the walkway coming in here. And
We've gotten it 2 years in a row.
Yeah, and she has suggested to me this would be a good thing to do. So I will leave this with you so we can apply for this and get some annuals for the walkway.
I think it's a great idea.
Okay, and then also to deal with someone who I know pretty well, we had talked about getting lines on the tennis courts for
Yeah,
pickleball.
for pickleball. Yep. We just have to wait for the ground to warm up a little bit
And
more.
that's fine, I just have to tell her that we discussed it and that it will be on course.
Yes.
Thank you.
Just a comment, I had a couple of people mention the town report and how nice the cover was this year. Really was outstanding. So
I thought it looked good too.
whoever was in charge, let them know.
The board selected it. Amy, Charlotte, Marge, and I all kind of worked on, we took pictures of the cane on the table. We took it leaning on the thing, up on it. We're holding it behind white. I mean, the cane was photographed all over the town hall till we found a good place. It was fun.
It was. Okay. I got a couple of questions on the bond. Is there any other problems that may hold these guys up from getting the bond that they had, the board member?
Yes.
Well, I think I don't want them chasing circles. I want to kind of give them to it all at once.
Well, sure. If we look at it transactionally, the first thing you'd have to figure out is title, okay, to determine whether or not it could support that. Then we would have to have an actual plan created, okay, for the structure. And then we would also have to have subsurface work done so we know exactly what septic system can be supported on the property. We don't know those things because those investigations haven't occurred yet. So we just don't know.
May I, as a citizen and a library person, because you sort of mentioned some of that to me last week, are these responsibilities that fall on the town, or is it something that under the purview of our architect who would have, I thought, done the septic and drainage and that sort of stuff fall under his work?
Well, to the best of my knowledge, they're not done yet.
Right,
So that's all I'm saying. So certainly we as this board have to work together with your board.
Right.
Okay, also, I don't think that you have a contract with the architect to go through the entire process.
No, his contract is now ended.
Right.
Yes.
So that would be the next step too. And we have
They're going to go to bid. We met on Friday, and they're going to talk with, 2 or 3 other firms as well.
Right.
To do requests for qualifications.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you guys are, like, was it $600,000, something like that?
$650,000.
Yeah, you can work with that. You get most of that stuff done. And I just didn't want to be, someone come back and say, oh, we want you to do this. We want you to do that. I want it, you gotta do this, and then we're all set with bonds.
Well, my husband Craig is the chairman of the building committee and is pretty well conversant in this sort of thing. But he and I both met with Karen. We are going to meet with the trustees of the trust funds on Friday to discuss the $650,000 plus that we have in our capital reserve fund to move some of that. It will be with Colleen and Dick Rugg and Dennis. Move some of those to a liquid asset so that we can pay for the things that we need to do before bonding, and then how to secure the remaining funds so that they are not so volatile and subject to. So after we meet with them, we will then report back to the trustees, probably in a special meeting to make that decision.
Right.
So we're moving forward.
Oh yes. And one other part in the warrant article was they're required to raise a certain amount of money. Okay, so we need to have a mechanism where that money can be placed.
Right.
And you don't want to put it in the Friends of the Library. Okay.
Right, we talked about the donations.
Exactly.
Right. So that mechanism will have to be
Right, we
created.
just have to show that gap amount.
Too. I did the numbers after we met the other day, and we have the full $3,577,125, or whatever it is, currently.
Even after the architect got paid?
We have all the money that we need.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've started to work on some bond, not bond counsel yet, because different bond and different banks like to use particular bond counsels. Without me going to look for any banks, they obviously read the paper that every town that has a bond passed, they come out of the woodwork. So I'm in the process of receiving 2 or 3 different proposals already from various banks. Joanne Klatkin, who is with New Hampshire Bond Bank, is now with a different bank, so she's reached out. And then I'll be reaching out to the New Hampshire Bond Bank as well. So the board will have 4 or 5 proposals to choose from.
So I think the answer is we're some length of time away from any particular bond issue, and steps have to be done in the meantime.
Right. And it takes 3 to 4 months anyway.
Yeah, the last issue that I know about is the church. You need to have a letter of understanding which everybody agrees with.
We began that process before this, and basically the trustees at that time said that until we knew whether it passed or not, it didn't make any sense to go forward, but there has been a draft.
Okay, good.
Drawn out, and it will be something that will be brought to the trustees, but probably be a complete church decision since, well, they speak for the church.
Right. Plus, it would have to be signed by us because the library trustees don't have the authority to deal with land issues.
Right.
Are there any issues with the budding neighbors?
No, she did come and vote last Tuesday, and I bet you I know how she voted. But we plan to meet with her again, and we've tried to do everything that we can to assuage her concerns about what the library building is going to do to her property value according to her daughter's concerns. Mm-hmm. Because the daughters are the ones who've been the most vocal, actually, about that. We are working with her. Okay. And so far, the architect of record, and we have expressed a preference to continue with him, but we will do the request for qualifications. He's a very good peacemaker with people in terms of trying to make things work for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Good. All right. Is there anything else?
No.
Okay, I just have one other issue I would like to bring up because several meetings ago I had brought up, and I know nobody's had a chance to go over everything going on, but the select person's responsibility as a liaison, there was really nothing in writing regarding that. And so I took the time to draft something up. I would like to hand it out to all of you, take a look at it. And I'd like to bring it back and discuss it at a later meeting. We won't do it tonight, but I'll pass this out to.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anything else anybody else would like to discuss?
Yeah, I got something here.
Go ahead.
That's something I was thinking about. I'd like to get Paul and Ralph in here. I'd like to discuss Paul and the firemen taking care of the fire hydrants rather than having Jonesy do it. If something doesn't have to be done 10 minutes after the storm ends, and we're only paying these guys to do this stuff, the firemen generally will just be traffic control, especially Post Road and Portsmouth Ave. We got the equipment next door. I don't see why we should pay $1,000 a storm to hire a contractor to do that. We're already paying someone, to be honest with you, you can't mow much grass after the snowstorm.
So is this for the next contract, working?
Next year, yeah.
Yeah.
It's too early, too late this
So
year.
something for Chester to keep in mind on rewriting that contract.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, why don't you two put that together and bring Paul and Ralph in? Okay.
Yeah, just to see if they have any problems with it.
Yeah, okay. All right. Okay. Anything else?
Just manifest when
Manifests? And then we will go into a closed session. Okay?
Okay, manifest. I'd like to move approval of the general fund accounts payable manifest number 6 dated March 22nd, 2018 in the amount of $105,787.60.
I do have a question on that manifest, just because I got
Chad
something.
Lee, I said aye.
Back in February 22nd, two buttons and lot, we hired a part-timer and a full-timer this year? That's what it is?
Yes.
Okay.
Officer John Sardina and Officer Richard Newman.
Okay, I just didn't know why we hired lot two,
So,
that's all.
you're talking about the Eagle Point gun bill of $800?
Yeah.
Well, that one is just ammunition.
Okay, I hadn't looked at the actual.
Yeah, that one's just
It doesn't
ammunition.
say, I didn't think, it doesn't really tell you, it gives you a model number, that's all.
Oh, yeah,
I thought it
no,
was
it's
two guns.
$800. No, I want to
So
say it's
probably
the
two cases,
ammunition.
2 boxes of ammo.
Yeah.
All right, that was my question though.
But we did hire 2 officers.
And that's a good idea.
It is 2 cases CS of number 54234.
All right.
That's why.
Yeah, it's recertification time for the
So
officers.
2 cases of ammunition.
22s aren't that expensive.
I know, that's about
I saw
average,
the money,
about
I said,
$800 a year.
Okay, so I guess we haven't actually voted, so.
No, we haven't. I have a motion. Do I have a motion?
There's a motion.
Yeah,
to-
Paul made the
There was a
motion.
second.
Approved. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay. Now, I move approval payroll manifest number 6, in the amount of $49,395.88.
Second.
Have a motion, and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, and just for a financial update, we were at $361,000 of $461 in snow plowing for 2018, and we are at $61,000 in salt of $75,000.
All right, spring dances are coming up.
Getting close.
Yeah.
Okay, so Vaughn, you still need to sign that one, please.
Okay, thanks.
Other sign.
Oh.
Based upon that, move we adjourn and move into a non-public session.
Okay, I have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Do we have to do a roll call for that?
Once we're into non-public.
Okay.